What if a simple mushroom had the power to connect your mind with the gods, or destroy it forever? What if entire governments played with that power, without understanding its consequences? Langley, Virginia, 1953. In the most secretive basements of the CIA, a scientist watches through a reinforced glass as a test subject rides on a gurney. His eyes are open, but he's not seeing this room. He sees dragons, demons, reality dissolving like ink in water. 2 hours ago, he was given a dose of psilocybin extracted from sacred Mexican mushrooms. Project MKUltra has just found its ultimate weapon for mind control. The subject screams incoherent words. His mind navigates dimensions that should not exist. The scientists take notes, cold as surgeons. They don't know that those same mushrooms have been worshipped as gods for millennia. They also don't know they're playing with forces that can shatter not only the mind, but the soul. It is death, it is life. It has overthrown kings, planted wonders. Conspiracy and science, crime and salvation. Echo of shadows, flash of light. This is Poison, Cure or Curse, where the mortal and the miraculous merge in a single vial. Let's travel first to Mexico, 1500 BC. In the misty mountains of Oaxaca, the Zapotecs discovered something extraordinary, mushrooms growing from dung and decay, yet holding the power of the gods. They called them teonanacatl, flesh of the gods. It wasn't just a poetic name. For these cultures, consuming these mushrooms was literally communing with the divine, crossing the veil between worlds, conversing with the dead. María Sabina, the Mazatec healer whose voice is still preserved in recordings, used to say that the mushrooms spoke to her, told her where the illness was and how to cure it. For her, it wasn't she who healed, it was the holy children who grow in sacred ground. Without knowing it, this woman was about to ignite a cultural revolution and a governmental nightmare. But before we reach the CIA labs, we must understand the science behind the magic. Psilocybin acts on the brain's serotonin receptors, specifically the 5-HT2A. What's interesting is that it doesn't just alter perception, it literally rewires neural connections. It's like temporarily rewriting the brain's software. The effects can last between 4 and 6 hours. In that time, reality becomes malleable. Colors come to life, shapes dissolve and reassemble, time stretches and contracts. For some, it's spiritual enlightenment. For others, a descent into pure madness. And not just in Mexico. In Siberia, ancient shamans had a method unsanitary but effective. They drank the urine of reindeer that had eaten hallucinogenic mushrooms. The psilocybin remained active after passing through the animal's system. This way, humans avoided the more toxic compounds, but still accessed the mystical journey. New York, 1955. R. Gordon Wasson was a respected Wall Street banker with a peculiar obsession, mushrooms. His Russian wife, Valentina, had told him stories of magical mushrooms from her childhood. Wasson set out to find them. His search led him to the mountains of Mexico, to María Sabina. What he experienced that night would change the Western world forever. Wasson later described seeing germs of light, patterns dancing in impossible dimensions. He understood truths he couldn't express with words. For 6 hours, he was more than human and less at the same time. He returned to the US and published his experience in Life magazine in 1957. The article seeking the magic mushroom became a global sensation. Suddenly, thousands of Westerners wanted to experience what he had. That article was the first shot of the psychedelic revolution of the 1960s. Without it, We might never have had timothyleary, the hippies, or the countercultural movement. But someone else had also taken notice, someone far more sinister, the United States Central Intelligence Agency. If mushrooms could reveal mystical truths, could they also extract military secrets? If they could break perceptual barriers, could they also break resistance to interrogation? The CIA thought so. Project MKUltra, led by Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, became one of the darkest programs in American history. Psychedelic mushrooms, LSD, and other substances were used in mind control experiments, often on subjects who had not given informed consent. The experiments were brutal. Psychiatric patients, prisoners, soldiers, all were used as guinea pigs. They were given massive doses of psilocybin and LSD, sometimes for weeks, while scientists observed their mental breakdown. They aimed for complete depersonalization, reducing a subject to a childlike state, erasing their previous identity through chemical shock therapy. One of the most infamous cases involved Dr. Frank Olson, a CIA scientist secretly dosed with LSD. Days later, he jumped out of a New York hotel window. Drug-induced suicide, or something more sinister. The government hid the truth for decades. While the CIA experimented in secret, a cultural revolution was taking root. Magic mushrooms had leaked from the labs into universities, from ancestral rituals to rock concerts. Timothyleary, a Harvard professor, became the prophet of the psychedelic revolution. His message was simple: turn on, tune in, drop out. For Leary, mushrooms weren't drugs, they were teachers, revealing that the reality we think we know is just one of infinite possibilities. They were keys to unlocking human potential. But what began as a spiritual quest soon spiraled into social chaos. Bad trips sent thousands of youths to psychiatric hospitals. Some never came back from their mental journeys. Psychiatrists began seeing cases of permanent psychosis, induced schizophrenia, suicides. The line between enlightenment and madness could be just one miscalculated dose. Not all psychedelic mushroom stories end in spiritual enlightenment. Some end in tragedy. Charles Manson used LSD and mushrooms to control his family. He gave them regular doses to keep them docile and suggestible. The crimes that followed shocked the world. Susan Atkins, a Manson follower, later described how Charlie gave them mushrooms and told them they were gods, that normal rules didn't apply. In those states, his words became absolute truth. They couldn't distinguish between his delusions and reality. In 1970, after a string of tragedies related to psychedelics, the U.S. government classified psilocybin as a Schedule I controlled substance. Scientific research came to an abrupt halt. The sacred mushrooms became criminals. For decades, psychedelic mushrooms remained underground. But in recent years, something extraordinary has happened. Science has rediscovered their therapeutic potential. Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College London, the world's top universities are researching magic mushrooms as treatment for depression, PTSD, addiction, and end-of-life anxiety. What they're seeing is revolutionary. A single psilocybin session, in a controlled setting, can produce lasting improvement in patients who hadn't responded to conventional treatment for years. The results are astonishing: 80% improvement in treatment-resistant depression, significant anxiety reduction in terminal patients, 67% success rate in addiction treatment. One anonymous patient described how, after 20 years battling depression, a single mushroom session gave him his life back. He saw his traumas from an unknown angle. He no longer felt like a prisoner of his story, but someone capable of writing a new chapter. And bad trips aren't just a thing of the past. In 2019, a young man in Florida, under the effects of psychedelic mushrooms, gouged out his own eyes. He claimed he saw demons coming out of his head and that it was the only way to stop them. Mushrooms open doors, but no one can guarantee what you'll find on the other side. But not everyone needs a full spiritual journey to benefit from mushrooms. A new practice has emerged: microdosing, taking subperceptual amounts of psilocybin every few days. In Silicon Valley, tech executives microdose to boost creativity. Artists use it to break creative blocks. Students, to improve focus. Microdoses don't produce hallucinations, but they bring subtle changes in perception, mood, and cognition. It's like using magic mushrooms as a brain vitamin. But is it safe? Long-term studies don't yet exist. We are experimenting with our own neurology without fully understanding the consequences. And so we reach the end of this extraordinary journey through the world of psychedelic mushrooms. From Aztec gods to CIA weapons, from 60s tragedies to 21st century therapies. Mushrooms have taught us something fundamental. The line between sanity and madness, between the sacred and the profane, between cure and poison is thinner than we think. Every time someone takes psychedelic mushrooms, they're spinning a neurological roulette wheel. They may find enlightenment, or lose themselves forever in mental mazes with no exit. Current protocols for psychedelic therapy are strict: controlled doses, safe environments, trained therapists. We've learned from the mistakes of the past. But the question remains, are we ready to open Pandora's box again? Magic mushrooms continue to grow in darkness, as they have for millennia. Silent, powerful, waiting. They are the keepers of secrets we may not be ready to learn. María Sabina, the healer who started it all, died in 1985. Her final words were a warning: the mushrooms lost their power when the foreigners came. They no longer speak with the same voice. Something was broken. Maybe she was right. Maybe when we pulled mushrooms out of their sacred context and brought them into our laboratories, we lost something essential. Maybe the real question isn't whether we can use their power, but whether we should. In the end, the story of psychedelic mushrooms is also the story of human consciousness, of our eternal search to transcend the limits of ordinary reality. They grow in darkness, silent, powerful, patient. They may open your mind, or seal it forever in a labyrinth with no way out. Perhaps we shouldn't ask if we can use them, but if we're ready to face the abyss they reveal. In our next episode, we will delve into the most chilling tragedy of social control through poison, Jonestown. We will discover how cyanide became the ultimate tool of a messianic leader to control more than 900 followers, from children to the elderly. The story of how a fruit drink became the most devastating weapon of mass destruction in modern history, where poison was not only a method of death, but of absolute control. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a comment, subscribe, and share. Poison, Cure or Curse is a production by Francisco Martínez. Thanks for joining us on this toxic journey. Until the next poison.